My name is Juliana. I'm 35 years old, married to Daniel for 9 years, and we have a 6-year-old daughter named Lara. She's our little sun, bright, curious, and full of energy. Our life wasn't perfect, but it was ours. A small house, busy days, and a lot of love in between. At least that's how it used to be, until she came. Daniel's mother, Ruth, always had a certain edge, the kind of person who smiles sweetly while stabbing you with concern. Everything is said, with sugar on top, but there's bitterness underneath if you know how to taste it. Thankfully, she lived in another city, so we only saw her occasionally, and honestly, I preferred it that way. Until one day, Daniel came home and said, "Babe, my mom's going to stay with us for a few days. Her apartment's under renovation, and she doesn't want to be alone in the countryside." A few days. 3 harmless words, capable of destroying everything we'd built. I tried to be welcoming. I cleaned out the guest room, bought her favorite tea and cookies, even had Lara draw a welcome card, and she arrived acting humble, watching, smiling, but evaluating every corner of our life. I gave her grace at first, but by day 2 she was already criticizing everything. She wrinkled her nose at the smell of my cooking. This seasoning is a little unusual. She said Lara's clothes looked too boyish. She needs to look like a little lady. She even said maybe Lara needed a firmer hand. You let her talk back too much. By day 4, she moved the living room. Furniture. Feng shui, dear. Your sofa's blocking the energy of the house. By day 5, she returned from the market with bags and told me she'd be reorganizing the pantry because the way we stored things was chaotic. By day 6, she walked into our bedroom, without knocking, holding a new set of pillowcases. These are Egyptian cotton, much better than what you've been using. And all of it said with a soft voice and a smile. But it wasn't kindness. It was control. She wasn't visiting. She was moving in. Bit by bit, my house stopped feeling like mine. The routine I spent years building was tossed aside. Lara, poor thing, didn't even know who to listen to anymore. One day she asked, "Mom, who do I obey, you or Grandma?" And Daniel? Blind. Or pretending to be. She's just trying to help Ju. It's how she is. You know my mom has always been like that. Yes. I knew. But never like this. Never every day. Never inside my kitchen. Never looking at me like I was just a guest in my own life. I started waking up earlier. Not out of discipline, but anxiety. My heart would race the moment I heard her bedroom door open. And I'd think, here we go again. Another battle without bullets, just words and looks. But I said nothing. Not out of weakness, but because I still wanted to believe it was temporary. Still wanted to believe in the few days. But deep down, I already knew. She didn't come here just to pass the time. She came to take over. And the only question haunting me, louder and louder with every passing day, was, how much longer am I going to stay silent? It didn't come all at once. That's the thing about people like Ruth. People who want control without appearing controlling. It wasn't screaming or slamming doors. It was slow, subtle, like water dripping onto stone until the surface cracks. She didn't just interfere. She infected. With smiles. With concern. With quiet jabs that slipped under the skin and settled in the bone. Every move I made, she had a better way. If I served pasta, she'd mention that Daniel used to love homemade sauce, not the stuff from a jar. If I said Lara needed to do homework, she'd sigh and say, "In my day, children didn't need screens to study. They used their minds." If I mentioned my work schedule, yes, I'm a freelance photographer working from home, she'd say, "It's Nice, you have a little hobby. But it must be hard to juggle that and be a full-time mom. A hobby. That little hobby paid half our bills. It built our daughter's bedroom. It bought the groceries she was rearranging in my kitchen. And every time I pushed back, even slightly, she'd tilt her head, raise her eyebrows, and say with that soft, pity-laced tone, "You're so sensitive, Juliana. I was just trying to help." And then, one afternoon, I heard her talking to Laura while I folded laundry in the next room. "You know, sweetie, Grandma's always here for you, even when Mommy is too busy taking pictures." Laura didn't answer. She just kept coloring. But I felt that sentence hit my spine like a slap. She wasn't just undermining me anymore. She was rewriting the narrative, turning herself into the savior and me into the distracted, incapable mother who needed support. And Daniel, still floating, in his fog of comfort. She doesn't mean it like that. She's trying to bond. Don't take everything so personally. No, Daniel. It's not personal. It's strategic. She spoke to my daughter like she was planting seeds, ones she hoped would bloom into doubts, into distance, into the idea that Grandma was the stable one, the wise one, the real maternal figure. And that wasn't all. I started getting odd texts from my sister-in-law. "Hey, is everything okay? Your MIL said you were overwhelmed. Are you guys having problems? At home? Ruth mentioned something about you needing space." I was stunned, embarrassed, furious. Not only was she controlling what happened inside our house, now she was trying to control how people saw me outside it. The final straw came one morning when I walked into the living room and saw her reorganizing my laptop bag. "Oh, I was just tidying things. You had so many receipts and memory cards stuffed in here. That bag is sacred to me. My mobile office, my creative tools, my work. It felt like someone had walked into my studio, rearranged my canvases, and scribbled on them in red pen." I took the bag from her hands. Not forcefully, but firmly. "Please don't touch my things," I said. She looked at me like I'd slapped her. "I was just helping." I didn't ask for help. A silence dropped between us like a curtain, heavy, tense. She went to her room without another word. I stood in the middle of the living room, shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline, from the realization that this wasn't going to stop on its own. She wasn't just crossing boundaries. She didn't even see them. This wasn't about misunderstanding or generational differences. This was about power, and I had spent weeks handing her little pieces of mine, smiling, avoiding conflict, making excuses, swallowing anger like pills. But not anymore. That night, I opened a blank document on my laptop and wrote a title at the top, "Everything She's Done." And I began typing, not because I needed proof, but because I needed to remember that I wasn't imagining any of this, that this was real, that I was not being dramatic, that this was my home. And if I didn't act soon, I would lose it, not just physically, but emotionally. She had crossed the line, and now it was time I drew one of my own. The breaking point didn't come with a scream. It came with a whisper. It was a Sunday morning. I was in the kitchen, sipping coffee, enjoying a rare moment of calm before the house woke up. Lara was still asleep. Daniel was in the shower. And, for once, there was no movement, no judgmental footsteps behind me, no unsolicited opinions being handed out with sugar and sarcasm. Then I heard her voice, from the hallway, soft but sharp. "I'm just saying, if I had raised Lara, things would be different." I froze. She was on the phone, talking to someone. I couldn't see her, but her voice echoed through the open hallway, each word like a needle pushed straight into my chest. I don't blame Juliana, really. She's doing her best. But some women just aren't meant to be mothers and wives. They get overwhelmed. Overwhelmed. That word again. weaponized now. And then she laughed, not a loud, wicked cackle, just a short, knowing chuckle that said, "Poor thing, she's trying." That was it. I didn't storm out. I didn't make a scene. I stood there, staring at the countertop, my hand tightening around the handle of my coffee mug, heart racing so hard I could hear it in my ears. And in that moment, everything slowed down. Saw myself, quiet, small, shrinking in my own house. I saw her, expanding into every space, rewriting my role, claiming a crown that was never hers. And I saw my daughter, watching all of it, learning from it. Watching how Mommy handled disrespect with silence, how Grandma spoke louder and always got her way. No more. When Daniel came out of the shower, I was already dressed, calm, focused. "We need to talk," I said. He sat down across from me at the kitchen table, still drying his hair with a towel, unaware of the storm that was forming right in front of him. I looked him in the eyes. "I love you, but this isn't working. Your mother crossed a line, and I've let it go on far too long." He sighed, already on the defensive. "She's just going through a lot." "No," I interrupted, gently but firmly. "She's going through my life, my space, my peace. She's disrespecting me as a wife, as a mother, as a human being. She doesn't mean it. She does. Maybe not the way you think, but she means it. She doesn't see me as your equal. She sees me as an obstacle." He went quiet. I didn't cry. I didn't plead. I simply laid it all out. Everything. The comments, the interference, the manipulation, the phone call, the social media hints, the lies masked as concern, and the quiet way she'd tried to erase me from the center of my own family. She's not just in this house, Daniel. She's in my head. And I can't live like this. He leaned back, took a long breath. I didn't realize it had gotten this bad. I nodded. "I know you love her, and I respect that, but I need you to love me enough to protect our home. Not from strangers, from the chaos inside." He didn't answer right away, but when he finally looked up, something had shifted in his eyes. "You're right. It was just 2 words. But they felt like freedom. We'll talk to her together," he said, "and we'll make it clear things have to change." That afternoon, I took another deep breath and walked to the guest room. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, flipping through a church newsletter like she hadn't just detonated a bomb under our family. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I simply said, "I heard your call this morning, and I know what you've been saying." She looked up slowly, caught off guard. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You do," I said. "You've crossed a line, and whether you like it or not, this ends now." She blinked, then smiled that same polished, practiced smile. "You're being dramatic, Juliana." I nodded. "No, I'm being clear." And for once, she didn't have a comeback. I walked out, closed the door behind me. My hands were still shaking, but I had never felt more in control, because the truth is, sometimes a woman doesn't need to raise her voice to be heard. Sometimes the strongest statement you'll ever make is, "This stops here." The next morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in months. Not anger, not revenge. Just clarity. I made breakfast like usual, except this time, not for approval, not to avoid conflict, but because it was my kitchen again. Pancakes, fruit, coffee. The kind of breakfast I used to make before the atmosphere in my house had started to feel like walking on glass. Daniel helped set the table. Neither of us said much. We didn't need to. The air between us had shifted. For the first time in a long time, he was standing beside me, not behind me. Ruth came into the kitchen, dressed and groomed like always. She paused at the doorway, eyes scanning the table. I could see the calculation in her expression. "Oh," she said. "You're up early today." I smiled. "I always was. You just never noticed." She sat down. Daniel poured coffee. We ate in a heavy silence. Then, just as I finished my plate, I slid a folded piece of paper across the table toward her. She looked at it, unfolded it slowly. Her eyebrows drew together. "What's this?" "A list of available rentals nearby. I spoke with 2 of the places yesterday. Both have vacancies this month. Quiet areas. Safe. Affordable." Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Just disbelief. "You're asking me to leave?" I met her eyes. "No. I'm telling you it's time to move on. This arrangement isn't working anymore. For anyone." Daniel reached over and rested his hand on mine. His silence spoke volumes. She looked between the 2 of us, still trying to find her angle. "I've done nothing but help this family," she said finally. "I gave up my space, my comfort." "You didn't give anything up," I interrupted softly. "You brought your storm into our home, and now we're asking for peace." "You're kicking me out," she said bitterly. "No," Daniel said, his voice steady. "We're setting boundaries." The silence that followed was different this time. Not tension. Truth. Ruth stood up, slowly folding the paper and placing it in her purse. "Well, I see where I stand." I stood up too. "This was never about standing," I said. "It was about respect, and from now on, that has to go both ways. Or not at all." She didn't respond. Just left the room. The door to the guest room closed with a soft final click, and I exhaled, not with triumph, but with relief. I hadn't wanted a war. I had wanted to live, to breathe in my own house again, to tuck my daughter into bed without second-guessing myself, to sit on my own couch and not feel like I was under surveillance, to be a wife and mother without having to defend myself inside the walls I built. And that day, I got that back. Later that evening, Ruth came out for dinner, quieter than usual. No comments, no corrections, just silence. It was awkward, but it was progress. A few days later, she told Daniel she'd made arrangements to move into a rental apartment 2 neighborhoods away. She said it was temporary, of course. I nodded and smiled. Let her keep the illusion if she needed it. Because I wasn't chasing illusions anymore. I was choosing peace. And the greatest peace I had found wasn't in her leaving. It was in me finally speaking, not shouting, not begging, declaring that this is my home, and no one, not even someone who shares blood, gets to rule it in my place. She moved out 2 weeks later. No dramatic exit, no tearful goodbye. Just a quiet morning, a taxi in the driveway, and the guest room door left slightly ajar. The only trace she left was a folded blanket on the bed and the faint scent of her perfume in the hallway. And just like that, she was gone. The house didn't erupt in cheers. There was no celebration, just stillness. But for the first time in what felt like forever, it was the kind of stillness that felt safe. I walked through each room in silence that day, touched the back of the living room chair she used to sit in, opened the pantry she had reorganized over and over, stepped into the guest room and breathed in the empty space. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't scared either. I was home. Later that week, I found Lara in her room coloring. I sat beside her and asked, "What are you drawing, sweetheart?" Showed me a picture of our family. Me, her, Daniel, holding hands, no one else. "I thought Grandma lived with us," I said softly. She shrugged. "Not anymore. Now it's just us again." There was no sadness in her voice, no confusion, just a quiet certainty. It hit me then. She had felt it too. The tension, the weight, the way our house had been shrinking around us. Children sense more than we give them credit for. And that's when I knew. I hadn't just fought for myself, had fought for her to grow up watching her mother stand up, speak clearly, and demand respect without violence or cruelty. A few days after Ruth left, a friend from Daniel's side of the family reached out. "I don't know what really happened," she said, "but whatever it was, you look lighter, happier, and that says a lot." People had heard Ruth's version, I'm sure, that I was cold, too modern, too sensitive, that I didn't honor my elders. But I didn't need to defend myself anymore, because I wasn't trying to win over the audience. I had already reclaimed my stage. And the funny thing is, once Ruth was gone, the house didn't just feel peaceful again. It felt alive. The kitchen had laughter again. Daniel and I started spending time together in the evenings, not avoiding each other out of stress, but reconnecting. Lara started sleeping better. I started sleeping better. I even picked up my camera again, not just for work, but for joy. And one night, while editing photos late in the office, I paused, because it hit me. She had come into my home like a slow storm, quiet at first, then all-consuming. And I had allowed it, thinking I was keeping peace, preserving love, being respectful. But real love doesn't require you to disappear. Real respect isn't one-sided, and sometimes the greatest act of strength is saying, "No more." Since then, I've become that woman, the one who says what she feels without apology. The one who teaches her daughter not just to be kind, but to have limits. The one who won't shrink to make others comfortable. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. You don't have to scream to be heard. You don't have to fight to be respected, but you do have to speak, because silence isn't peace when it costs you your voice. So to every woman out there holding your breath to avoid conflict, biting your tongue to keep the family together, or shrinking in your own home just to be tolerated, let me be the one to tell you, you deserve better. And the moment you say it, clearly, calmly, and with conviction, is the moment you start to reclaim everything they tried to take from you. This is my house, and no one runs it but me.